How do we know if someone is avoidant or just secure, but taking time to evaluate in early dating? I love this question. It's so powerful. And I want to start answering this question by saying, if you are operating from an anxious wound, then secure behavior may look avoidant to you, right? So that's important to kind of preface, right? If you are very anxious and somebody else is secure, their security may come off as avoidant because they don't need it in the same way that you need it. And so when they're not exhibiting that need for you in the same way that you feel that need for them, you might be inclined to say, oh, they're avoidant. Well, maybe they're not avoidant. Maybe they're just secure. Maybe they're just taking time to evaluate. And I understand that's what you're asking, right? How do you know the difference? You know the difference by managing your anxiety and exploring the relationship. So earlier I spoke about these two kinds of extremes, right? One extreme is I chase, I beg, I diminish myself, I people please, I manipulate, I control. That's one extreme. We could call that the anxious extreme. The other extreme is, oh, they're not doing what I want them to do, I'm out. That would be the avoidant extreme. Sometimes I'll just say this for the anxious people who are listening. Sometimes anxious people take the avoidant extreme because that protects them from feeling the anxiety. So just because you're taking the avoidant extreme doesn't mean you have an avoidant style. So I spoke about this earlier. What's the solution? The middle way. The middle way, right? So what's the middle way? Well, I'm not going to go all the way into my anxiousness where I try to push and force and control and manipulate and people please and beg and pander and all of those, toxic things. I'm not going to do that. But I'm also not going to take the avoidance extreme and just protect myself from uncomfortable feelings by just walking away. So what am I going to do? I'm going to manage my anxiety first, which I didn't have a lot of time to really go into that in detail today, but managing my anxiety looks like self-soothing, self-regulating. It might look like breathing, meditating, journaling. It might look like putting my phone down for a few hours and going out in nature and grounding myself and like releasing my need to get a response from that person right now, right? So these might be different ways of managing my anxious response. So I'm going to do my best to regulate. I'm also going to be willing to feel and be with that anxiety, right? So I'm not just going to disconnect from the relationship in order to protect myself from my uncomfortable feelings. I'm going to lean into the relationship. I'm going to show up authentically and vulnerably, and I'm going to be available for this connection. And I'm going to deal with the feelings and the emotions that come from that. Now, in combination with feeling my feelings, managing my anxiety, grounding myself and soothing myself through my potentially anxious experiences, I'm also going to communicate in an authentic and powerful way. The kind of authentic, powerful communication that I've been describing in today's episode. If I do this, if I continue to work towards showing up as securely as I possibly can, communicating as powerfully and authentically as I can, asking for what I want, expressing certain needs and standards and expectations in the relationship, being willing to be open-minded and compromise and navigate through some difficult conversations and, everything I've been talking about today. As I continue doing that, this person is going to reveal themselves. If I am communicating clearly and authentically and vulnerably and from a secure place, but they cannot match that, then they are likely avoidant. And not a moderate avoidant, but avoidant to a degree that they're not able to meet me in a healthy relationship. But the thing is, I can't know that for sure until I show up that way. So if I communicate vulnerably and authentically and I make myself available, and as a result of that, they step in and they do the same, They are demonstrating that they can do that. And so that means that they're not avoidant. At least they might be moderately avoidant, but they're not extreme avoidant. Now we can work with something. Now there's some potential to grow together. So to answer your question, how do we do it? We do it by living in that uncomfortable gray area. And I don't recommend living there for years, right? If you don't receive clarity, I said earlier, like it might take a month, it might take a couple of months, but if you don't receive clarity within a reasonable period of time, then you can trust for whatever reason it's not meant to be. Maybe they have severe avoidant attachment. Maybe they're just not that interested. Maybe it's incompatible. But whatever the case is, you've brought your best foot forward. You've given the relationship space to progress. You've communicated authentically. You've asked for what you want. If after a reasonable period of time, the relationship doesn't naturally take off, then you say, okay, I've done everything I can with love, with respect. I'm going to release this. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to move on. So that's a beautiful question. And I love that question because to an anxious person, security can look like avoidance. And so I think it's so powerful what you're illuminating here. And I think it's so important that we lean into our own discomfort rather than just reacting to it and saying, fine, they're avoidant, I'm out.